Now let's go on talking about the human realm. Both Laozi and Zhuangzi think that it is within the human realm that all trouble arises. Laozi's diagnosis is that intentional acts in the human realm make all the trouble. His solution is to purge human world of intentional acts. Zhuangzi accepts Laozi's diagnosis that intentional acts are misplaced, but his solution is not merely to remove intentional acts from human world, but also find a place for intentional acts. The place can be found at a higher level beyond the phenomenal world. Zhuangzi locates the essential nature of the human somewhere beyond the phenomenal world. It is qing that enables man to perform intentional acts. According to Zhuangzi, qing springs from the Tao, like, quote, vapor condensing into mushrooms, unquote, or like the distinct sounds which issue from various natural cavities and hollows when the raging wind blows. Qing, as a matter of fact, forms part of the human organism governed by the genuine Lord of all the cosmos. However, in life experiences, the human heart or human mind as one organ in human organism has the fatal capacity to arrogate to itself the attributes of a fully closed-off, fully individualized entity. Quote, the fully completed or individualized heart, unquote, 诚心. It is this fully completed or individualized heart that is able to establish a self-being of its own, cut off from the flow of the Tao. Anything or process that becomes fully self-encapsulated and separated from the flow of the Tao does violence to the Tao. A good example is that of the perfect lute performance of the musician Zhao. It is the perfection of lute music as a kind of self-enclosed reality that cuts it off from infinitely higher music of the Tao. The human heart asserts its own self-being by fixing on aspects of phenomenal world around it. We attempt to freeze those aspects as objects of our fixed goals or thoughts, and thus absolutize them. Our likes and dislikes become fixed by obsessive passions and by fixed opinions concerning right and wrong. In fact, like all finite transient creatures, we move toward the death. Quote, they become entangled with everything they meet. They struggle with their minds day after day, sometimes straying wildly, sometimes probing deeply, sometimes calculating. In their small fears, they are fretful. In their large fears, they are downcast. In making judgments about right and wrong, their minds shoot off like a crossbow pellet. They cling to their opinions as if they had taken a holy oath. They fade like fall and winter. Is it not sad how we slash and jostle each other, and our race to distinction is like a gallop which nothing can stop? We toil away our entire life and see no success. Is it not sad? What's the use of saying, I'm not dead yet? As the body decays, the mind decays with it. Is this not a supreme sorrow? End quote. This is a typical picture of our life. We compete for wealth, power, or the rightness of our fixed opinions. We are asserting our fully individualized mind, 诚心. This tragical life cannot be saved by a sage king who rids the human world of all the intentional acts. Remember, when we talked about Lao Tzu's political design, we find ourselves in a paradoxical situation. Lao Tzu's sage intends that the human world is purged of all the intentional acts. What Zhuangzi wants to do is to eradicate all intentional acts, including Lao Tzu's sage's political design. He calls on everyone to get rid of individualized mind. It is not an easy job to get rid of individualized mind, especially when it comes to the intellectual conflicts of his time. The conflicts between Confucianists and Mohists provide a paradigm. Humans tend to have totally different opinions about the same matters simply by dismissing each other as wrong. How can anything in the Tao be right or wrong? Quote, by what is the Tao hidden that we have the genuine and the false? By what is language obscured that we have rightness or wrongness? How can the Tao disappear and not be present? How can words be present and not be acceptable? End quote. When Confucianists and Mohists have different judgments about the same states of affairs, what is wrong for one is right for the other. It is not that the perspectives of Confucius or Mozi may not have some truth when applied to certain situations, but they make every effort to encompass all the circumstances and perspectives with their own rightness, and to find moral and intentional wrongness everywhere. This is a manifestation of self-assertive and isolating mind. It does not help at all to get them to reach the Tao. Intellectual debates are about winning and losing and not about the truth, and it is simply the more skillful dialectician who wins. Quote, suppose you and I have an argument. If you have beaten me instead of my beating you, then are you necessarily right? And am I necessarily wrong? End quote. If another debater is brought in, he simply brings a third point of view. Only Zhuangzi's true man, 真人, can truly adapt to the situations of life without an interest in preconceptions, since he has no need for self-assertion. Zhuangzi denies any function to the political order in correcting things. The notion of the sage or of the political order as a power for correction presupposes the whole notion of fixed views on right and wrong. Instead, he takes the political order for granted as part of the furniture of ordinary human life in its hopelessly unredeemed state. Rulers good or evil, seem to be an inescapable part of the human realm. Zhuangzi recognizes the enormous charismatic power of the Taoist perfect man. This might be the focus of political power. The famous mystic Liezi is treated by Zhuangzi as a man inclined to use his spiritual power to display himself and to control the world through his charismatic magic. When Liezi passed a soup stall on his way to the kingdom of Qi, the soup makers dropped everything and rushed to serve him. He suddenly turns about and cancels his trip to the court of the Duke of Qi. He says to the recluse Bo Hun Mao Ren, quote, "If I can't dispel this inner spiritual power, it becomes a kind of radiance that once outside of one overpowers man's minds." End quote. He then goes on to express the fear that if the Duke of Qi were exposed to it, he might try to shift the government onto Liezi himself. Bo Hun Mao Ren replies that there must be something about Liezi himself which leads him to encourage this kind of influence to manifest itself. However, what Zhuangzi emphasizes is that the problem for a man of gnosis like Liezi is how to avoid government. The fact that people flock around to stay in his spiritual radiance does not mean that the sage can simply redeem them through his love. Their enthusiasm may merely have the effect of getting the sage entangled hopelessly in the world. In Chapter 4, The World of Men, we see the protagonists Confucius and Yan Hui. Yan Hui wishes to go to the state of Wei, attempting to influence the tyrannical and ruthless young ruler to better his ways of rule. Confucius plies him with questions about how he proposes to accomplish his purpose. Confucius says, quote, "The perfect men of old saw that they had it in themselves before passing it on to others." End quote. The implication here is that Yan Hui lacks this wisdom. Confucius thinks that Yan Hui is full of self-righteousness and probably bent on achieving fame. If Yan Hui tries to preach to a man like the young ruler about Ren, this might be regarded by the ruler as an effort to show off his own excellence. The ruler will surely not allow him to do so. Maybe the ruler is as good a dialectician as Yan Hui and even beat him in the argument. Yan Hui proposes other strategic approaches, but they are all rejected by Confucius. Confucius is convinced that there is nothing to do against the impermeable self-assertion of the ruler. Instead, Confucius shifts direction and urges Yan Hui to fast his mind. Yan Hui effectively learns to fast his mind. He reaches a level on which he is able to say, quote, "Before I heard this, I was certain that I was Hui, but now that I have heard it, there is no more Hui." Unquote. He is purged of his ego and forgets all his intentions. At this time, Confucius seemed to advise him to go to Wei and simply make himself available. If the ruler is prepared to listen to him, he should respond. The implication here is that the ruler's exposure to the silent mystic aura may possibly affect him somehow. On the whole, the general message is that the political order cannot remedy the human plight. Human plight is rooted in the individual mind itself. The political realm is full of this delusive consciousness. The political realm remains part of the furniture of an unredeemed world. The true man may find himself in circumstances where he must play a role in government. In that case, he will simply adapt to whatever the situation requires. Zhuangzi does not assign any redemptive role to the political order.